So picture this. Everyone avoided the homeless camp under the bridge, treating it like an invisible part of the city. But when international criminals started using it as a base for child trafficking, they had no idea they'd chosen territory protected by a former SEAL who'd lost his way but never lost his mission. Under Interstate 95, Philadelphia, the place the city chose to ignore. Concrete bridge supports, metal beams, constant traffic noise above. Below, a different world. Tents, shopping carts, cardboard boxes. The city of the homeless. This was officially a place where no one should live. But over 200 people called it home. Veterans, people with mental illness, drug addicts, and those who'd simply run out of luck. Society's forgotten people. In the farthest corner of the bridge, separate from the others, lived Pete "Ghost" Wilson. 47 years old, long hair and beard, dirty clothes. He'd been here for 3 years, didn't talk much to anyone, mostly muttered to himself. Other homeless people called Pete Crazy Pete. PTSD, flashbacks, acting like he was fighting invisible enemies. But they also kept a respectful distance. Pete was different, had dangerous vibes. The truth was, Pete Wilson wasn't crazy. He was just broken. 6 years ago, Pete was Petty Officer First Class Pete Wilson, Navy SEAL Team 6. 14 years in the Navy, 8 years in SEAL teams. Counterterrorism, hostage rescue, high-value target operations. Pete's specialty was child protection operations. Human trafficking rings, child soldier networks, pedophile rings. Pete hunted these monsters. Rescuing children, eliminating predators. This was Pete's life mission. His last operation was in Somalia. Child trafficking ring, international network, over 200 children held hostage. Pete's team went on a rescue mission. The operation was successful. Children rescued, traffickers eliminated. But Pete's team leader, Marcus Rodriguez, his closest friend, mentor, died in the crossfire. Pete lost part of himself that day. Marcus wasn't just a friend, he was a brother, and Pete couldn't protect him. PTSD, survivor's guilt, depression. The Navy provided support, therapy, medications, but Pete couldn't heal. Missions continued, but his spirit was broken. The final mission in Pakistan was a disaster. Wrong intelligence, children weren't there. Pete raided a civilian compound. Innocent family killed. International incident. Pete blamed. Honorable discharge, but reputation destroyed. Pete returned to the civilian world but couldn't adapt. Jobs, relationships, normal life, nothing worked. 3 years ago, he lost everything. Apartment, job, family contact. Pete hit the streets, eventually ended up under the bridge. But even here, Pete hadn't lost his sense of mission. Unconsciously, he took on a protective role for the homeless community. When drug dealers bothered the camp, Pete would intervene. When police harassment occurred, Pete would de-escalate. When predators targeted vulnerable people, Pete would scare them away. The other homeless didn't know Pete's past, but they instinctively respected him. Pete was dangerous, but dangerous on their side. Sarah Martinez, 35 years old, single mother of 2, temporarily at the camp due to a housing crisis, was the first to understand Pete. "You're not a normal homeless person," she told him one day. "You're a protector." Pete hadn't responded, but Sarah was right. Pete might be homeless, might be broken, but he was still a guardian. The change began in October. New faces started coming to the camp, well-dressed but with wrong energy, business suits but predator vibes. The first suspicious visitor was Diego Morales, 30s, expensive car, claimed to be a social worker. But his questions were wrong, too specific about children, families, vulnerabilities. "How many children are in the community?" he'd asked. Pete was immediately alert. This wasn't normal social service, this was reconnaissance. The second red flag was Maria Santos, claimed to represent a children's aid organization, but the organization didn't exist, credentials were fake. The third warning sign was Victor Kozlov, Eastern European accent, too much cash, too much interest in children and families. Pete recognized the pattern. 20 years of experience, multiple trafficking networks, these signs were unmistakable. Someone was scouting vulnerable children in the community. Old SEAL training activated. Pete began covert surveillance, tracked visitors, identified patterns. Diego, Maria, Victor, different people but coordinated operation. Meeting points, communication methods, target identification. Pete discovered the shocking truth. They were planning to use the camp as a base for child trafficking operations. Vulnerable families, desperate parents, invisible children, perfect hunting ground. Pete wanted to contact federal authorities, but the problem, homeless veteran, PTSD diagnosis, zero credibility, who would believe him? As an alternative, he warned the camp, Sarah, community leaders, parents, but he didn't want to create panic. Pete made a decision, solo operation, stop the traffickers, protect the children, keep the community safe. Just like old times, except this time, Pete was alone. Pete set up a makeshift command post, abandoned shipping container in a hidden corner of the bridge. Inside, surveillance notes, camp layout, threat assessment. He tried to contact old Navy contacts, but phone numbers had changed, relationships severed. Pete was truly alone. Equipment was minimal. Flashlight, basic tools, knife. Weapons access impossible. Felony record from the Pakistan incident. But Pete's greatest weapon was his brain. 20 years of training, tactical thinking, operational planning. Strategy was simple: disrupt trafficking operation, document evidence, protect children, eliminate threats. Monday night, Pete went into action. Diego was at the camp, targeting Sarah's 8-year-old daughter, Sophia. "Beautiful girl," Diego was telling Sarah. "Perfect for special education program. Better life, opportunities." Pete immediately intervened. "Sarah, take Sophia inside the tent." Diego was surprised. "Who are you?" "Neighborhood watch." Diego laughed. "Homeless crazy man? Go away." Pete stepped closer. 3 years of street life, but underneath, still, a SEAL. "You need to leave, now." "Or what?" Pete smiled. "First time in months. Or I show you what the Navy taught me." Diego reached inside his jacket, probably for a weapon. Pete was faster. Grabbed his wrist, applied pressure point. Diego dropped to the ground. "Listen carefully," Pete whispered. "These children are under my protection. Touch any of them, I kill you. Understand?" Diego nodded, terrified. Pete released him. "Now get out. Don't come back." Diego left, but Pete knew he'd return with backup. Trafficking organizations don't give up easily, especially when challenged by a homeless veteran. The next day, Pete prepared the camp. Escape routes planned, hiding spots identified, community warned, but not panicked. Sarah approached Pete. "Who are you, really?" Pete hesitated. 3 years of hiding, 3 years of anonymity. But now truth was necessary. "Navy SEAL, retired. These people are trafficking children. I have to stop them." Sarah's eyes widened. "How do you know this?" 20 years fighting these monsters. I recognize the signs." "Let's call the police." "Police don't pay attention to homeless camps. We have to protect ourselves." 3 a.m. 5 vehicles surrounded the camp. Professional operation, coordinated movement, serious firepower. Diego had returned with backup. Maria, Victor, and 6 additional operatives. International trafficking network, well-funded, well-armed. Pete was in ready position. He'd evacuated the community to hidden areas, children in secure locations, adults in defensive positions. Victor announced through a megaphone, "We want specific children. Cooperation, compliance, no one gets hurt. Resistance, everyone suffers." Pete radioed back. Old Navy radio Pete had fixed. "This is U.S. Navy SEAL Petty Officer Wilson. You are trespassing protected territory. Withdraw immediately." Laughter echoed from the traffickers. "Homeless crazy man thinks he's military." "Wrong," Pete replied. "Military thinks he's homeless." Pete entered single combat. 1 SEAL versus entire trafficking operation. Impossible odds, but clear mission. The camp layout was Pete's advantage: hidden passages, defensive positions, environmental knowledge. 3 years of living here had taught him every inch. Pete applied guerrilla warfare tactics: hit and run, disappear, strike again. Traffickers fell into confusion, lost coordination. First operative down, silent takedown, no gunfire, no alarm. Second operative neutralized, improvised trap, SEAL engineering. Victor realized this wasn't a normal homeless person. This was a trained professional. "Who is this man?" Victor radioed. Diego responded, "I don't know, but he's military trained. Find him, kill him." But Pete was a ghost. 3 years of practicing invisibility, 20 years of stealth training. Traffickers couldn't hunt him. The homeless community began supporting Pete. Sarah provided medical aid. Marcus Williams, Vietnam veteran, gave tactical advice. Elderly Rose Johnson, former nurse, treated the wounded. The camp united to protect children against predators for survival. Pete realized this wasn't just an individual mission. This was community defense, and Pete wasn't alone. "We fight together," Sarah declared. "No," Pete replied. "Too dangerous. I'll handle this." "Like hell," Marcus intervened. "We protect our own. You're part of the community now." Victor made a desperate move. Hostage situation. He kidnapped Sophia, demanded an exchange, Pete's surrender for the child's life. Classic terrorist tactic. Pete knew the playbook. Meeting arranged. Center of the bridge. At dawn. Public area. Pete prepared for the final operation. One shot, one opportunity, one child's life. Dawn, 6 a.m. Victor held Sophia at gunpoint. 5 backup operatives. Escape vehicles ready. "Surrender, crazy man. Child dies if you resist." Pete walked forward, hands visible, surrendering. But Pete was a SEAL. Surrender wasn't an option. Final movement. Pete dove. Victor distracted. Sophia escaped. Gunfire exchanged. Chaos erupted. The community emerged. Homeless veterans, desperate parents, invisible people suddenly visible. Traffickers overwhelmed. Professional criminals versus community warriors. Numbers won. Police arrived, finally. Federal authorities, trafficking investigation, arrests made. Victor, Diego, Maria, entire network. International trafficking ring disrupted. Pete was questioned extensively. Real identity verified. Service record confirmed. SEAL background validated. Media was interested in the story. Homeless hero SEAL stops child trafficking. Pete declined interviews. Agent Jennifer Walsh, FBI Human Trafficking Task Force, approached Pete. Impressive work, Petty Officer Wilson, interested in consulting. Pete looked around the camp. Sarah, Sophia, Marcus, Rose, his community, his people. "Thank you, but my home is here." 6 months later, the camp was transformed. Government funding, legitimate housing, social services. But the community stayed together. Pete became the unofficial leader, not as an authority figure, but as a protector. Children safe, families secure. Predators scared away. PTSD was still a struggle, but he had purpose. Marcus Rodriguez's memory was honored. Mission continued. Sarah's daughter Sophia called Pete Uncle Pete. First time in years, Pete smiled. A community center was built. Veteran services, children's programs, family support. Pete coordinated security, but also counseling. Broken veteran healing other broken veterans. But the real truth was this: Pete was never truly homeless. He was just in the wrong place. When the right place came, protecting community, Pete found home. Real warriors don't need uniforms, titles, official recognition. They just need people to protect, missions to complete. You know what I told you, never underestimate society's invisible people, that homeless veteran, that struggling family member, that forgotten community member. They might be guardians waiting for a mission. And when danger comes, that broken person might show extraordinary courage. Because some oaths never expire, some missions never end. Do you know a hidden guardian like this? Someone in difficult circumstances, but with a protective spirit? Write their stories in the comments, because here at Time Awakened, we honor unsung heroes, especially veterans, especially forgotten people, especially those society overlooks. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to share. Every community needs a guardian.